Penny, how are you?
I'm so well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much indeed. I'm feeling mentally tough today. I
Good.
I had a good sleep. I think that helps. I'm sure you'll tell me that it does when we get a bit into this. But listen, before we do, Penny, I know you very well, but there'll be a lot of people out there who don't. I'd love you to tell us a bit about your story and where you personally have had to be mentally tough.
So I didn't know I was, but I was building my mental toughness from a very young age. So I came from a really messed up, dysfunctional, weird family, and I didn't know that was making me resilient and focused and stuff because that's the effect it had on me. But I suppose once I'd left home, which was at 14, and I started building my mental toughness in homeless hostels and with my heroin addict boyfriend and all that nonsense. But I sort of followed my childhood dream to be a rally driver. And that's where really everything I learned to that point started to work for me and helped me to achieve. Really, looking back, was I still can hardly believe what I did do. I sort of made the impossible possible because I was too young, too female, and too unconnected in motorsport to be the first woman in the world to drive for Ford in a world rally car. I mean, that was just ridiculous, but I did it, and my mental toughness kept me completely focused, completely determined. So in rallying, it was incredibly useful. But of course, a lot of the rallies are very, they run over 4 days, so you have to be physically fit, mentally alert. It drains you of everything you can possibly throw at it. And I thought that was me at my most mentally tough until I got in the boxing ring. And I realized that I hadn't discovered much at all about mental toughness, because in the boxing ring, and I've done 2 fights now, that was the most extreme, rapid development of mental toughness. That bounce back ability, the resilience, the courage, the confidence, everything are off the scale of every single one of those elements. But I've also run multiple marathons. I've done 3 in 3 days, and then lots of endurance events. So that's another brilliant development of mental toughness. That's sort of, I'm not going to give up. I'm completely committed. However hard it gets, I will be resilient and I will keep going. And of course, I've run my own business for 30 something years. Gosh, I don't even want to work it out. And just anyone that works for themselves knows that that will require certain skills and capabilities. So all in all, and there's lots of other things, lots of little things that I've done, climb mountains and all sorts of things, that have all helped contribute to me building my mental toughness. But the truth is, I didn't know I was doing it until later in life, when I discovered what mental toughness is all about.
Brilliant, fantastic. And actually, I think running your own business is a bit like boxing, isn't it? You're constantly being hit and having to get
Yes.
up.
You're picking yourself up again and going again. Yeah,
Yeah,
true,
yeah,
true, true.
brilliant, 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 fantastic. I mean, and if people know you and see you, you're only a tiny little thing, and to think that you go and be boxing and rally driving, and wow, it's very cool.
No one's ever called me tiny, Mira, but thank you.
You are.
Well,
So,
but the scales don't say that. But anyway, I'll just take the compliment and we'll move on.
yes, take the compliment, please. We're bad at taking compliments, we women. So you mentioned that you really didn't know until later in life what mental toughness was.
Yeah.
Define it for me. What is mental toughness?
I now know that mental toughness is our ability to deal with stress and pressure and crises and challenges and setbacks. So this is not a macho or aggressive notion by any means. Some really quiet people are incredibly mentally tough. This is the ability to stay focused, determined, resilient, despite whatever is going on around you. And if you think about it, if you're able to manage the stress and pressure of life so that you don't get beaten and battered by everything that happens, you're more likely to enjoy life. Sort of, it'll become water off a duck's back to a degree. You start to see every challenge that confronts itself as an opportunity. You start to get really excited about setbacks because you want to actually discover the answer to this and what opportunities lie behind it. So, if you're really committed and focused and determined, if you're really mentally tough, it means you are more likely to have a relaxed, successful, enjoyable life. Because if you crumble and crack at every sign of stress or pressure, life is miserable when you just can't cope.
Yeah, I hear you, absolutely. Although I think sometimes we all do have those times where we can't cope. So can you build that mental toughness?
Well, you're right. All of us, everyone gets stressed, everyone gets anxious, 100%. So the good news is that some of us deal with that better, and it's learning to deal with it better, finding new strategies, new approaches, which is why adversity and setback is incredibly useful, because without it, we wouldn't learn anything. So no adversity, no growth. I welcome adversity every day, because I'm going to find out something I didn't know about myself or the world. So yes, absolutely, every one of us can develop mental toughness. That's what I work with people to do every day. And it's really exciting, and people are much more capable than they ever realize they are. And a lot of the people I work with, I set them lots of challenges. I'm quite a practical coach. They discover that things really aren't as daunting or as terrifying or as hard as they first thought. Quite often it's the thought of something that's terrifying, not the actual doing.
Can you give me an example of some of these challenges you set? Now I'm a bit curious now.
Oh goodness, it could be anything. So if somebody's lacking confidence, for example, which is one of the elements of mental toughness, I might set them a challenge to do a presentation to their team or something like that, and they're like, no, absolutely no way, I can't do it. And then we sort of break it down into little pieces. We do some visualization exercises, we do some breathing stuff, we do some planning and preparing stuff, some all sorts of little elements, and then they do a presentation to their team. And this is the most exciting bit of my job, when they let me know how it went, and they say, it was amazing, I was brilliant, I really enjoyed it, everyone loved it. And they never thought a couple of weeks before that they were ever capable of doing it. So that's that sort of thing. It's difficult to generalize, because everyone has different they come to me with different things, and of course they always change, because one day you might be feeling that you're losing confidence, the next day you might be feeling less committed. So it's a constantly changing scenario for everybody.
Yeah, no, I get that, absolutely. And do you think that people who are more mentally tough, let's say, have certain qualities, or do they believe more in themselves and in their abilities?
A really mentally tough person, and by the way, you can be too mentally tough, which I'll explain in a moment, but a mentally tough person will have a complete and utter faith in their own ability. They will see challenges as opportunities. They will be 100% committed to everything they do, and they'll feel in control. And when you have all of those things lined up, you sort of feel that you could take on anything. But every bit of those 4 aspects that I just described, they will dip and they will peak and they will plateau, and they will, it's shifting sand the whole time.
Fantastic. And I'm curious now, because you said you can be too mentally tough, which I'm thinking, really, how?
Yes. So you'll know people like this. Somebody will spring to mind as I describe the person who is so focused and so determined and committed that they actually stop listening to everyone else around them. And that's a nightmare. One, it's a nightmare for everyone else around them, because they feel that they don't matter, they don't count, their opinion is worthless, and they're of no value. So it's useless for building a team if you are too focused and committed, because you're unreadable. Nobody can get near you. You're intimidating. You're dogmatic. You lack empathy. So you can be too high up this spectrum if you're not careful. So the perfect sort of balance would be really empathetic, a great listener, however, being very focused, very determined and committed, but without excluding the people around them. And I guess, that's just the story of any great leader, isn't it? Would have those qualities, but it's that mental toughness as well, that even if you're not in control, you look like you are, and people believe you are, because they need you to be in control if they're not.
Oh,
So
fantastic. And
yeah,
yes, you're right. I almost wrote a list of people that you were describing that who were
there you
too
go.
mentally. And there's been a couple of times when possibly I have been a bit about a couple of things. But anyway, hey, let's digress. Let's move forward. Aha. So you mentioned resilience as well when we spoke. And I mean, I think some people confuse resilience with mental toughness, but they're two different things, yes?
Well, they are two different things, and to a degree, resilience is part of mental toughness. But the academics, and I'm not sure that the nuances of this are terribly important, but mental toughness would be, I'm going to do it because I want to. Resilience might be, I'm going to do it because I have to. And that's actually, if you think about it, a very different scenario. But I don't want to get caught up in the pedantics of it, because if you can recover quickly from difficulties and setbacks, you are resilient, you are mentally tough. And that's the important thing, is being able to recover quickly when you get knocked back or knocked down.
Brilliant. And speaking of recovering, we can hear you've got a little bit of a cough there. Would you like to grab some water, or are you okay?
I've got a cup of tea here. Sorry.
Have a quick slurp. That's okay. No, I could hear you struggling there with your voice, and it's important that
Okay.
you've still got a voice by the time we
I'm
finish.
good. I'm good.
You're good. Wonderful. And speakers have to look after their voices because it's your instrument, isn't it?
Yeah, but there was a big football match on last night, and I might have shouted a bit too much.
Ah, yes. So at the time that we're recording, it's the morning after or the
Yes.
afternoon after, the day before, when
Yes.
Italy beat England. I'm very sorry about that,
Shush.
everybody. I had predicted it, but hey, I'm very sorry. Let's not dwell. Let's not dwell. Let's be mentally tough about it.
Exactly. We bounced back from that one, won't we?
Okay. So people can improve their resilience and improve their mental toughness. That's absolutely a fact, yes?
Oh, 100%. You are more resilient today than you were before the pandemic hit. You know that. And everybody probably, or mostly, will be more resilient, more mentally tough than they were a year ago. We've all had to develop it. We don't know we're doing it, but every one of us will have developed in some way. We just never sit to reflect on it. But you are more mentally tough now than you were when you were 20 or 30 or 40. You are always developing your mental toughness. We all are.
Brilliant. So it's true that the older you are, the wiser you are, yes?
Mostly.
So let's imagine I'm Gareth Southgate now, and and you need to help me to bounce back and regain momentum. Did you see what I did there? I took the question and I made it relevant. What advice would you give me to get my team back to being resilient, bouncing back and regaining our momentum again?
I would say just stop. Just stop, and just zoom out a bit here. What's actually going on? And you know what? Rather than asking or trying to find the answers to all sorts of things, you just step back and ask, what is the real question here? That is a much more powerful way to start moving forward. What is the question I'm trying to answer by finding all the answers? So it's about stopping, stepping back, refocusing, prioritizing, and you do that by asking, what is actually the real question I'm trying to answer here?
Well, that's good. That's very deep and philosophical. I like that. So actually, I think you're leading me into my next question. I think I probably know the answer now, but I'm going to ask anyway. So how important is goal setting, and how should we go about it? I think you're going to say to me it is.
Well, I know for sure that some people will avoid goals and targets like the plague. Not everybody is motivated by goals and targets, which is why lots of people either are in sales and oughtn't be, or will avoid that sort of area of work all day long, because sales targets and goals can expose you as a fraud. They could expose you as inadequate. Goals could be really scary things for some people. However, I'm actually a very goal-orientated person, because we've worked together. And if you set me a task, I take an enormous amount of pleasure in delivering the goal. I really enjoy goals, but because it focuses my mind, because when I have a very clear goal, the distractions fall away, because I'm really thrown down this sort of laser focus of the goal. And for me, that's just enormously useful. which is why I'm motivated by goals. But it's really important to remember that not everybody is. And the other thing is, when you're working in a team, and if a leader just makes the assumption that everyone is motivated by goals, they won't understand that that maybe there's members of the team who will be motivated by something else, and identifying that is far more important than pushing and pushing and pushing them to do something that's actually demotivating them. So is everyone in your team focused, motivated by goals? Maybe not. Maybe you're making some assumptions here. So that's always a really good question when I'm working with teams, that we try and understand each other a bit better. What motivates each one of us? Because it would be different. But your question was, how important is goal setting? For some of us, really important. For some of us, we just run a mile from setting goals. But on the whole, I would, as you and I know, we work very well to goals. They focus my mind and remove distractions.
I mean, for me, I think you need to have a sense of direction, don't you? And a goal gives you a sense of direction. Otherwise, it reminds me of, this is showing my age here, but it does remind me of the Monty Python sketch, where they all set off from the same point, but they're all running in different directions because nobody knows where the finish line is. So for me, I think the goals are important. And I also think that if you have a goal, if you don't have a goal, shall I say, you probably aren't going to, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say, but I think people who have goals tend to be more successful than those who don't. Is that a terrible thing to say?
If you took the football analogy and you took the goals away, literally the goals, you would just be kicking a football around a pitch with no point to it. So you can immediately see why a goal would be important, because we have to do this thing over there in order to be successful, to win. So for you and I, who are goal-orientated people, I totally get the value of a goal. I just think it's important to remember that some people aren't like that. We just assume they are.
Yeah.
But take the goalposts, take the actual goal off a football pitch, and you've just got a very, very boring, nonsensical thing to watch, haven't you?
Yeah, you've just moved the goalposts. Brilliant.
Yes. Okay, so let's get off the football theme.
Let's get off the football theme. Let's talk about business. Okay, so if you fail or your business fails, should you persist, or do you accept it and rethink? Is it a bit of both? That's a big question, right?
Well, it is, but in a funny way, I'm going to give you the same answer that I gave you before, which is stop. Just stop. Ask yourself the real question here, because refocusing, prioritizing, all that stuff is going to give you the answer probably as to whether you persist, whether you give up, whether you change direction. And if you fail or your business fails, was your question. There is an opportunity in every challenge.
Oh,
there really is. So we mustn't forget that. So when we talk about things failing, to me, I'm like, no, I just want to stop you right there, because there's an opportunity here. We just haven't uncovered it. So there's lots more to that question than just accepting something, rethinking something. It's a bigger thing. There's stuff in there. There's gold in there. You just got to get it out by asking. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, when the door closes, a window opens.
Yeah, right.
So, something like that. Yeah, brilliant. How important is routine in order to sort of build your mental toughness and, when dealing with disruption?
I think for most of us, very important, but not for everybody. I'm discovering this, the more people I work with and the more mental toughness coaching I do, that everyone does require different things to motivate them. But for me personally, routine is massively important. But if I have too much routine, that demotivates me. It's a balance. So I like to know what I've got to do to achieve something. But if you make it too samey, I start getting bored and I lose interest. So it's a fine line, but then I'm a funny one, Maria. So I don't know that the way I operate is anything to go by. But for a lot of people, the distractions can be taken away by routine, and disruption can be taken away by routine. So it can be enormously helpful.
Okay, cool. So But with regards to decision making, then, should we make big decisions if we aren't feeling particularly mentally tough or feeling particularly resilient? And we might not have a choice, perhaps, to make decisions.
Well, there's a camp that will say, if in doubt, do nothing, and there's a camp that will say, no action. No action is worse than inaction. I'm in the gosh. My mum was pretty unhelpful, really, not very good as a mum. But the one thing she always said to me, which I never forgot, is when in doubt, do nothing. Just stop, step back. I think this is what she was saying. Refocus, reframe everything. Just take it all in, and the universe it will fall into place. So sometimes actually just taking a breather and making no decision can be really useful. But I don't like inaction for too long, because action will take you somewhere. Inaction doesn't really serve you too well. So it's a bit of I'm answering your question with two opposite answers. But I think trusting your intuition is really important here, because most of us probably know, really, if we're honest, our real deep intuition, which is the one thing we can rely on and very rarely do. It's sort of giving us the answer. It's giving us a nudge, and we tend to ignore our intuition quite a lot. So I think tuning into that a little bit more can be really helpful.
Brilliant, brilliant. Remind me the 4 things that make up mental toughness. You said commitment, focus, resilience.
So the 4, I mean, there's lots of aspects of them, but feeling in control.
Right.
And that's not just in control of your life, but in control of your emotions. That's a biggie. There's commitment. I have a theory that commitment is a complete thing. It's not a 99%. It's you're either committed or you're not. There's no degrees of commitment. It's all or nothing. It's a switch. Challenge, seeing challenges as opportunities rather than threats, and learning from everything that goes on, and then having a genuine confidence in your ability, like a really deep confidence that I know I can do this. I don't need anyone to tell me I can, because I know I can. But it's also confidence in dealing with other people, your interpersonal confidence, speaking up and speaking out, even when you know you are absolutely right, but you just daren't speak up. A mentally tough person go, I'm going to say it because I believe I'm right. I want to be heard, and what I've got to say is important. So those are the 4 aspects.
I'm glad I checked with you, because I'd got them wrong. So it's control, commitment, challenge, and confidence.
Correct.
Fantastic. You have, however, talked about focus on several occasions in the answers to these questions. So I have a question for you here. How do you stay focused? I'm easily distracted, especially if there's some bad news on the television, or something happens. I find it very hard. Have you got any tips for me to stay focused?
I have some exercises. There's an online exercise that I get people to do, which I can't do it on a podcast, but prioritizing is a really good way to start. A lot of people will be distracted because they choose to be. It sounds
yeah, when I'm doing my accounts. No, it's true. When I'm doing my accounts, I will be distracted very easily. Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
If I've got to do my accounts, I will rather go and clean the toilet. I will find things to distract me in order to avoid the one thing that actually needs doing. And it's often been said that I've completely forgotten what I was going to say then.
You're helping me focus.
Can you I'm
going to help you focus.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
And not get distracted by toilets.
I was going to say the one thing, you have a to-do list, and there will be something that always goes from today's to tomorrow's, and tomorrow's to the next day's, because you just can't face it. There's always one of those. That's actually the thing you've got to start the day. This is my challenge to you. Tomorrow, the one thing that keep moving to tomorrow's list, do it first tomorrow, because it will probably have the most impact. It's probably the most important. And if there's some uncomfortableness about it, there's a reason. But we often put off the most important thing instead of prioritizing it. So yes, we get distracted, sometimes because we choose to. So that this is about discipline, and that's a big aspect of mental toughness, is having that discipline and self-awareness. I know I am avoiding this. I know I am allowing myself to be distracted. So that self-awareness is really helpful, and not pretending and lying to yourself, and identifying the priorities, really.
Oh goodness, I'm going to not like you very much in the morning when I tackle that task. I will be thinking about it.
But you will be really pleased you did, because you'll think, oh, that wasn't so bad after all. I'm really glad I did it. And if it doesn't go so well, at least it's off your to-do list.
Okay.
So you only win.
I'll message you. I'll message you.
Good.
Penny, coming back to mental toughness, can you measure someone's mental toughness?
Amazingly, there is an online assessment that I put people through. It's phenomenal. This assessment's been developed over 30 years, where I can measure your mental toughness in the 4 areas we just spoke about. So whatever you think you are, the assessment is too clever. You can't cheat it, and you know it's not to catch you out. It's to give you a snapshot of where you are, how you are today. And it'll be different tomorrow, and it'll be different yesterday. But it gives you a snapshot, which when I'm working with people, whether it's teams or individuals, it gives me a picture of where you're feeling, what you're feeling, how you're feeling, where you're at with life. And it gives us a great starting point to start coaching and developing. So yes, the answer is absolutely yes. You can measure somebody's mental toughness. And it is the most phenomenal assessment. It is a psychometric test, and I'm not a big fan of psychometric tests, but this one is different. And I highly, highly recommend anybody that's up for it to just get in touch, because it's quite an eye-opener. I've never had anyone do it ever who has said, this isn't phenomenal. It really is.
I know that because you put one of my team through it.
That's right, I did.
Yeah. And she came back to me and said she thought she knew herself very well. And then she got this psychometric test back and she said, actually, it was so accurate in a way. It wasn't what she was expecting, but it was absolutely spot on.
Yeah, it's so clever.
Yeah, very clever indeed. Fantastic. So we've been talking a lot about individuals and individual mental toughness, but clearly if you're working with an organization and you're trying to help them, they want the entire team to be mentally tough. How do you get an entire team to work together and as a mentally tough team?
Exactly. So imagine a team, and this isn't hard to do, to imagine a team of, let's say, 20 people who are under incredible stress and incredible pressure to deliver some insane target in a ridiculous deadline. And that's happening all over the place right now. In order to do that, you've got to be working incredibly tightly together, which means you've got to know each other incredibly well. I've got to know your strengths and weaknesses, because I need your support and you need mine. And that means, so I've been working with teams over the last sort of 2 years now. I put everybody through the mental toughness assessment, so I know where we're at, but then you can put those assessments, there's say 20 of them, through another machine, and it spits out a mental toughness score for a team. So they might appear to be super confident, but the truth is they're not quite as committed as you thought they were, or whatever. And then I work with them over a period of time. It's usually 12 weeks. And I retest them or reassess them at the end. And it's never, ever not gone up. So it's wonderful. So I do individual stuff and I do team stuff, coaching with them. And it's phenomenal. But it's about understanding. I didn't know Sarah lacked confidence. I thought she was really confident. Now I know I can deal with her. We can work together better, because I can maybe help her with that. And I've got to bear that in mind when I give her this project or this task. So it's about the teams getting a much clearer and deeper understanding of each other, which rarely happens, if I'm honest, because most people will wear a mask and show what they want to show, rather than them being a little bit more vulnerable. But a team that is really strong and really productive and really going to manage that stress and pressure and deliver insane targets, they're going to have to be a little bit vulnerable to just getting that little bit deeper is the secret. It certainly is in my experience. It's just that most people are too scared to do it.
Yeah, and I can see that, getting to know each other a lot better and sort of focusing on these 4 areas and those topic areas. Yeah. I think that's really, really valuable.
It all comes down to trust, because if you're going to be that vulnerable with a group of people, you have to feel, and you have to have that culture going on, or to start to develop it. immense trust, really incredible, deep, immense trust, that's when really the magic starts to happen.
Absolutely. And I imagine also it will build trust going through the whole process. It will build greater trust and real cohesiveness in the team.
Yeah,
I think it's very exciting. So here you are. Here's my challenge to you then. So that's a 12-week program that you work with people. Can you really help people be more mentally tough in a 45-minute, 1-hour speech?
It seems I can. Get really good feedback. I mean, what I do is I challenge people to think about stuff that maybe they haven't thought about before. So I don't really tell people anything in my keynote. I ask them questions of themselves. So much more powerful, and stuff really lands because they can't avoid answering that question in their own head. I do tend to offer certain tasks to all of the audience, and whether or not they do them, I'll never know. One of the challenges is nasty, and people do tend to tell me about that one. But yes, I give them ideas and I give them tasks, but I ask them challenging questions, and that kicks off a process. There is only so much you can do in 45 minutes, but certainly my aim would be that I touch a bit of them that they didn't expect, that they've had some thoughts and some light bulb moments that don't leave them, because I don't want to do a 45-minute keynote and they've forgotten about me an hour later. I want it to stay with them, not me, but I want the message, the thought, the challenges to stay with them and to question themselves. That's my intention. And my intention, of course, is that they change something, that they take some kind of action.
Lovely. Fantastic. Listen, we've rapidly run out of time, so I'd love you to leave us with what your next challenge is. You must have one.
I've always got one on the go. My most immediate challenge is I've just been commissioned to write another book. I've got to write 365 ways to develop mental toughness. So obviously it's a tip a day, which is actually going to be quite a challenge because I think I've got loads, but whether or not I've got 365, we're yet to find out. So I've got a couple of months to do that. And of course, the timing and that goal, I will deliver on this date and I will write this many per day, that's how disciplined I have to get. I should be able to do it. But yeah, that is, to answer your question, my next challenge.
Fantastic. I shall check in with you and see how you've got on.
I'm sure you will.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Penny, thank you so much. Really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot. I hope you've had a good time.
I've really enjoyed it. I can't believe the time has flown.
It has indeed. So all remains is for me to thank everybody for listening to the Speaker Show. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on Apple. It's Apple Podcasts now. It's not iTunes anymore, is it? And you can keep up with future episodes on the Speakers Associates website, which is speakersassociates.com, or on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. And see you next week. Bye-bye for now.